and spent decades in prison for a crime she did not commit because of bad science.
We want to tell you about a startling development in a case we have been following of a North Carolina man sentenced to 80 years in prison for rape and burglary. 64-year-old.
We are following breaking news. A black man who was found guilty of attempted rape in 1977 has just been freed after a Louisiana judge ruled he did not get a fair trial.
He stands next to the flag of the state that wrongly convicted him.
Accused, a black man says tonight he was racially profiled and accused of a crime he did not commit.
Of being decoys to an actual shoplifting.
Our justice system is statistically corrupt when it comes to jailing black men and women in our country, and it's about time we ask ourselves why. Why is it just from the color of your skin are you 3.5 to 12 times more likely to be arrested for a crime that you did not commit? If we look into the research conducted by the National Registry of Exonerations, we can break this down into 3 major categories: murder, sexual assault, and drug-related crimes. Looking into murder, a black man is 7 times more likely to be convicted than that of a white defendant. And of all the murders in the United States, only 15% of them are actually tried and true black on white crime, while 31% of all black murder exonerees were convicted of killing white people. What makes all this even worse is that most wrongful convictions will never be discovered, and based strictly off statistics, over 50% of black murder convictions are based on false claims. Within this same research study, it was found that a black man is 3.5 times more likely to be innocent than that of a white man relating to crimes involving sexual assaults. This is mostly due to mistaken eyewitness identification by white victims in crimes involving violent black assaults. In most cases, mistaken eyewitness identification are a product of racial discrimination, not only from the witness, but by court officials, and in rare cases, blatant racism towards innocent black defendants. Even more frightening is that black exonerees were given longer and harsher sentences than that of a white defendant who committed the same exact crime. The researchers also concluded that in drug-related crimes, an innocent black defendant is 12 times more likely to be convicted than a white defendant. This is mostly due to police prejudice in the sense that they enforce drug laws more harshly when arresting a black defendant. Statistically, a police officer is more likely to stop, search, arrest, and convict an innocent black defendant than any other race when it comes to drug crimes. So now let's dive a little deeper into the major issues while looking into these 3 major areas of crime. The first place we are going to look is misconduct in our courtrooms. Misconduct is when someone's personal prejudice gets in the way of justice. While the National Registry of Exonerations reviewed exonerations in murder prosecutions, 70% of them can be attributed to official misconduct. This included things like misleading a witness and or threatening a witness, which is known as witness tampering. This was the cause for 31% of exonerations, while an additional 11% could be attributed to state officials lying under oath, otherwise known as perjury. The researchers also investigated delays, where a white defendant would on average be exonerated 3 whole years before that of their black counterparts. Even furthering this, a black inmate on death row is likely to spend 1 whole year longer than that of their white counterparts. These death row inmates are contemplating every day for that whole year if they would be put to death for a crime they did not commit. Diving even deeper into this research study, we will look into eyewitness misidentification, where 69% of all sexual assault exonerees were released on the basis of misidentification. This can mostly be blamed on cross-racial identification. Within this process, it is proven that white Americans are more likely to mistake a black person than a white person. In certain cases the researchers reviewed, racism wasn't even hid, and we can blame that on the structure of our justice system. In 1980, for example, a Texas Ranger investigating a rape murder of a high school student turned to a black custodian and said to him, "Since you're an N-word, you're elected." This was witnessed by the custodian's colleague, but that did not matter to the jury, and he was sentenced to death row in 1981. Luckily, he was exonerated in 1990, but imagine the fear that this man felt every single day, wondering if it may be his last for a crime he didn't even commit. In 2014, a man named Glenn Ford was exonerated after 30 whole years on death row. His lawyers discovered officers lied to the jury and hid police reports that included tips from informants that cleared Ford as a suspect. However, none of this mattered to the officers, and they let the suspect, who admitted he was the actual killer, walk free while Ford spent 30 whole years behind bars. Now we have to ask ourselves, how can we change? Maybe Supreme Court members need terms so that way new ideas regarding legislation can be implemented to protect these people's rights. Additionally, we give police officers new tests to prove they are not racially biased.